All right, how's it going, YouTube? This is Chris with another episode of Peregrine Outdoors. Kind of doing a little bit of a different kind of vlogish news sort of video with you guys today on this chilly by California standards February day today. Um, Something that came up last night on social media and eventually got onto several different Second Amendment related blogs and so on and so forth was something that happened with Benchmade, the manufacturer of many knives and tools and stuff like that. That people who enjoy the outdoors tend to buy, or at least those who can afford them tend to buy. Um, and I wanted to just to have a kind of bring something to your guys' attention if you guys weren't already aware of it, excuse me, and then kind of just talk about some of the complications and maybe the questions that this raises for us as consumers, and also what it means for people like me who are content creators, and probably also pull the curtain back a little bit on what I'm doing and that sort of thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of go into the background of exactly what happened. So yesterday, a social media post from the Oregon City, Oregon. I don't know why I find that funny, but they're actually called Oregon City, and they're in Oregon. All right. So police department put out a social media post where they talked about they destroyed some firearms that were in their possession that needed to be destroyed, and that they contacted the knife maker Benchmade to assist in their destruction, and then they were thanking Benchmade for helping them out with that service. So this, as you can imagine, drew a huge backlash from the 2A community, from the Second Amendment community, outdoors folks, all that sort of stuff. Because they're seeing, and especially because they posted photos along with it, which essentially shows a couple of guys with power grinders cutting up firearms on a bench. So a lot of people are looking at this as like, oh my God, look at what Benchmade's doing. They're assisting in the destruction of firearms. This is a clear stance and showing that they are anti-Second Amendment, so on and so forth. So there's this big to-do about that. There's gun writers and gun blogs trying to get in on it and trying to find out more information about exactly what's going on. There's the same law enforcement agency, the Oregon City PD, puts out a clarification post that did not do a very good job of clarifying the situation. But essentially what they said is that they contacted Benchmade to help them destroy these guns, and that these guns were turned over by private individuals requesting that they be destroyed, or that they were evidence in criminal proceedings, and that there was a court order mandating that those guns be destroyed. So essentially, looking like they're trying to say, hey, these guns were going to be destroyed no matter what. It's not Benchmade's fault that they helped us do it, because if it wasn't them, it was going to be somebody else. Essentially, is at least how I took it, which doesn't really help clarify the situation very much. It's obvious that they might need to work on whoever's in their PR department at Oregon City, Oregon Police Department. But anyways, and there's a whole question as to why you would want to make a PR post, a social media post, advertising that you're destroying guns. But I mean, it is Oregon, and Oregon follows California, and I think that that's not something that is it wouldn't necessarily be ill-received in their part of the world, just like it wouldn't be ill-received in most of California. But anyways, then there were some journalistic groups or some firearms bloggers that were able to get a hold of Benchmade's PR department, and their PR department essentially put out a statement saying that they assisted in destroying these guns because the the department, the law enforcement agency lacked the specialty equipment in order to comply with the ATS regulations on destroying firearms. They had they being Benchmade. Benchmade had the specialty equipment, and since they're a strong supporter of local law enforcement, they obliged in assisting or providing, or at least providing, that specialty equipment to the police department for that purpose. Now, again, we're not privy to the entire process of what happened. I don't pretend to be an expert on how it is that the ATF mandates that a gun be destroyed. I know it requires a certain placements of cuts and a certain number of cuts, if I remember correctly. But all I saw in that picture was a couple dudes with angle grinders. So if what the police department needed was specialty equipment or angle grinders, electric grinders, handheld grinders to destroy these firearms, then they very well could have gotten them from Home Depot or from Lowe's or from officers who work there who probably have them in their tool chests. So I find that a little bit strange that that Benchmade would say that they needed specialty equipment, and then the pictures that are posted are with angle grinders. I don't know if maybe there's a special type of cutting blade that they're using that you can't get at Lowe's or Home Depot or something along those lines. But that's their story, and that's the question that it raises in my mind. So this kind of comes to this, you think this already kind of sounds bad for Benchmade because they're getting kind of brought into or thrown out into the social media sphere, the court of public opinion by this law enforcement agency, making a post about them destroying firearms. A great number of people who buy Benchmade are law enforcement, but they're also, outdoors people, and a lot of those people are pro Second Amendment. So huge backlash coming back in on them. And then, it goes a step further by one of these firearms blogs uncovering via a website called opensecrets.org, which they kind of made it sound like this. Other folks have made it sound like this organization, Open Secrets, like cropped up overnight. But according to their website, they're actually like over 30 years old. I went on and looked at the breakdown of what Benchmade, and essentially, okay, back up, I'm getting ahead of myself. OpenSecrets.org compiles and makes searchable public information regarding political campaign contributions. So essentially, you can, through a series of drop-down menus and stuff and keywords, you can search for people or organizations, what their donations are and where they went. So so what they published, the fire, and I think this is for Truth About Guns, published on their blog, was campaign contribution data from the 2010, 2012, 14, 16, and 2018 years of elections, and what that data looked like from Benchmade to political candidates. Now, it's interesting because to start off with, in 2010, they actually kind of split their contributions. They donated 57% of their donations to Democratic candidates and 44% to Republican candidates, which shakes out to being $3,900 for Democrats and $3,000 for Republicans. I'm going to save 2012 for last because I think it's funny. If you go to 2014 through 2018, so 2014, 16, and 18, they gave 100% of their donations to Democrats and no money to Republican candidates. And the total among those 3 years is just ballparking $25,000+ in those 3 years of contributions. Going back to 2012, and the reason why I saved it for last is because it's the 1 year that they actually donated 100% of their political contributions to a Republican candidate, but that 100% was $500. So they did give $500, all they were willing to spend on that election, to a Republican candidate. Although that was probably a pretty safe election to do that in, because kind of, it was a 2012 re-election of Barack Obama, so on and so forth. But anyways, so what this says is that essentially they're giving money, most of their money, the lion's share, over 90% of their political contributions over that time period went to Democrats. And of course, Democrats are looked at, and rightfully so, as the main opposition to the Second Amendment in the United States, the preservation or expansion of Second Amendment. They are the opposition by many standards, and mine included. Now, that's not to say that there are people who are registered Democrats who aren't pro-gun. There are, but generally speaking, part of the platform of the Democratic Party is to reduce gun violence through through common sense gun reform, which translates into eventually registration and confiscation. But anyways, that's another soapbox. So what this story, as it's unfolded, develops into, it really makes its own gravy, because it forces people to ask several questions of themselves. The first is, it kind of questions the reasoning behind why this post was made, why a police department would think that it would be good for PR to show them destroying firearms. It also calls into question why Benchmade would have assisted in that, and if they had any say in as to whether or not the PR people from the police department mentioned them in that post, that if they were like, yeah, sure, go ahead and tag us in that, bro. Like that, probably not a very good look for a company that has a great many supporters who are pro Second Amendment. Now, and when I say supporters, I mean customers. The other thing that it forces us to ask about is, why do companies give money to certain political parties? So what people might not understand, and I don't pretend to know like a ton more than anybody else, but my bachelor's degree actually is in political science, and we did talk a great deal about campaign finance and stuff like that when I was in college, especially since when I was in college and doing these courses was right around the time that the Citizens United Supreme Court case was passed, and so there was a lot of discussion and debate about whether or not that was something that was truly in the best interest of the American political process. So, but going back to the question of, why do companies give either Republicans or Democrats money? And what I think people would be surprised about is that, generally speaking, large companies don't really care in terms of value, who they give to. I'm going to say, making a generalization there, of course. There are some companies who are staunch in their beliefs about certain things, that they're not going to make that waver one way or the other. They are going to give money to the party that they absolutely believe signals their virtues properly. So there is that. But for a great many large corporations, they are going to give money to the candidates who seem to be in favor of policies that are going to increase their chances of providing a profitable return for their investors. So if that's a Republican, great. If it's a Democrat, fine too. So I think that's also something we should take with a grain of salt here. I'm not letting anybody off the hook. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to provide motives for Benchmade, because obviously we don't know what they are, because they haven't said anything. The only thing that they've said is that they support local law enforcement and the Second Amendment, whatever the hell that means. It's a vague blanket PR statement trying to get people to forget about what they did or didn't do or whatever the situation is. So really, it kind of forces us to ask that question, like, okay, well, why are they giving money to the Democrats? Well, maybe it's because those Democrats they gave money to promised them something, or maybe it's because that Democrat has a voting record on something other than guns or other than Second Amendment issues that they believe is going to get them a return on their investments. And so, yeah, we have to kind of, in this era, and I don't know if we'll call it epoch of virtue signaling companies, primarily those on the left. That's where we normally see most of this type of virtue signaling coming from, whether it's purposeful or not. Do we want that? Do we believe what they're saying? And so, a good example would be that maybe not right now, where the division has been so great between the right and the left, between the Republicans and the Democrats. There were times when the NRA, National Rifle Association, would give money to Democratic political campaigns because that particular Democrat had a favorable opinion on the Second Amendment. Now, that's almost never the case now, but that's something that happened not that long ago. We're talking 10 or less years ago that this would have happened. Now, it sounds unimaginable today, but it's something that did happen. And so what we have to ask ourselves is where people put their money sufficient enough for us to say you are a good company or a bad company? Kind of seems where you land on it. If you believe that the purpose of that company existence is to provide profit for their shareholders, and where they're putting their money politically is making that happen or increasing that profit, then yeah, they're doing what you as an individual want, and so you can go ahead and support them. If what you want is conversely, if what you want is a company that lives or espouses your personal values, and you're a strong Second Amendment supporter, at this point, I'm fair to say that Benchmade's probably not where you want to be putting your money. I'm a big fan of the vote with your wallet. Again, huge fan of the free market. So if you think that Benchmade has kind of jumped the shark, so to speak, and is now on the side of the antis, or at least they're not as staunchly Second Amendment as once believed, then go ahead and stop giving them money. Don't buy their, what I would consider, overpriced knives. But anyways, so you actually have the right to do that, and I think that's the way to solve this issue. I think a lot of people want to get up in arms, and they want to start calling for people's heads and people's jobs and all this sort of stuff like that. But ultimately, the way that you solve an economic problem or an economically based political problem is in an economically based political solution, which would be not to shop there anymore, not to buy their product, because that forces them to change their strategy. If they want to stay in business, then they need to do something different. Now, that's up to the consumer to decide. Personally, I kind of have a little bit of an interesting view on this because a lot of people kind of get clouded by their own values on this situation, and they don't open up their mind to the very many possibilities as to why a company might be doing this. But like I said, one of the biggest reasons for a capitalist company to do anything is to provide market share, to provide profits to their shareholders. So we like to think, because we're 2A activists and we may buy Benchmade or we buy knives, or knives seem to have a nexus to the Second Amendment and so on and so forth, that all knife companies and all gun companies and everything like that are going to be as staunchly 2A proponents as we are. But there's a great many people who use Benchmade products that have no skin in the game as far as the Second Amendment is concerned. They don't care. They're not 2A activists. They don't pay attention to the news. They don't see that there's an erosion in Second Amendment rights, or they believe that it's a gun problem. That it's a gun only problem, that there's not an attack or an erosion of your Second Amendment rights for knives as well, in addition to guns. Or they see knives and guns as different. Knives are okay, guns are bad. So Benchmade may not really have that big of a stake to be staunchly pro Second Amendment. They may be okay to cut out that side of their, to go ahead and, cut off their nose to spite their face kind of a thing, cut out that part of their market, and continue on. Or they're hoping that many people will forget about this in a couple months, and the people who were like me saying, don't spend money on Benchmade because they're not as 2A as you think, a lot of those people will forget, and they'll go back to buying Benchmade, or they'll go back to buying Benchmade even though they don't think that they're a force that's positive for the Second Amendment, but because they like their products and because Benchmade has a fashion to it, just like Dolce and Gabbana for clothing or whatever the hell people are wearing. True Religion jeans, I think, are the thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I wear Wranglers. So the relaxed fit ones, not the give you testicular cancer, not those kind. Anyways, moving on. So I think it makes us ask some very significant questions, and like that. So I kind of got off to one early, and then got off to a second before I properly introed it. But the first question being, why do corporations give money to certain parties versus another? And then secondly, do we care? Like I said, if you believe that virtue signaling for your company is important, that you want a company that espouses the same values that you do, then yeah, I'd say maybe don't buy a Griptilian. Buy something else. Do some research into another knife company that provides a similar quality product, and then see if there's a company out there that's not playing both sides of the aisle. My caution to you, though, is that don't be surprised that when you look out there that you find that more and more companies are doing this. The popular opinion is not in favor of gun ownership. It's not in favor of knife ownership. So playing both sides is actually somewhat of a smart play from an economic standpoint. So don't be surprised if you look out there and find that there are companies, like Benchmade, other companies that are doing the same exact thing. So, for what it's worth, we've rambled through this news story and kind of asked some questions about it. So, what I want to ask of you guys is, where do you guys stand on this? Do you care? Do you think that it's important for Second Amendment as Second Amendment proponents or as outdoor people? Do you care whether or not a company espouses your the virtues that you hold? And lastly, is this something? Does it go so far as to the point where you would be willing to boycott a company for that? So those are my three questions for you. Feel free to flood the comments below with those questions. Maybe we'll do a follow-up Q&A if there's any need for it or any want for it. Also, let me know if this just isn't your kind of video. Feel free to go ahead and let us know down in the comments. This is a new channel, trying to get it up and running. I don't want to be making content that you guys don't want to watch. So if it's something that's not really that interesting to you, please let me know. I was actually really pleasantly surprised when we did the California Ammogeddon video. I thought nobody was going to watch that. It's actually one of the most watched videos on the channel right now. So, and that was a super long one, and it was with really dry content and stuff like that. So, I'm hoping that this is going to be kind of the same deal, that it's going to be persuasive to some people, that it's going to be entertaining to some people. So let us know if that's the case, and let us know if that's not the case. So as always, thank you very much for watching this video and making it to the end. Also, if you like the video, please make sure to click that thumbs up, like this video, share it with your friends and family. The knife people, the gun people in your lives who may not know about this kind of thing going on. And then if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel, because we have a bunch of videos coming up that are going to be, we have actually a backlog of videos now, which is nice. And also, we've opened up a Facebook page, so there's a Peregrine Outdoors Facebook page. If you just go on over to Facebook, search up Peregrine Outdoors, we should come up. And you guys can connect with us there as well. We're also going to be continuing to promote our uploads on that Facebook page as well. So I'm not having to do it off my personal page anymore. And then also, we'll eventually be doing some Facebook exclusive content, maybe some Facebook Live stuff, at some point. So good to tie in with you guys there. And then another good thing to bring up is hitting that notification button. This is going to be kind of an unannounced video, or at least it's going to be uploaded before it's announced. So this is a good reason to have that notification button clicked and ready to go, so that you're being made aware when new content comes out. So it's not something that you're stumbling across and going, oh wait, I thought it's not Tuesday, there shouldn't be an upload, blah blah blah. Well, no, you don't need that, because you are tied into the notification system. So anyways, again, thanks so much for your time, really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please let us know what we're doing right and what we could be doing better, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Peregrine Outdoors.